The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. I hope you had a very wonderful weekend. Well, we are into a very new week, and the activities to the build-up to the 2023 general election continues. And of course, just as you'll be waiting to dilute the one that has just taken place, another one pops up. As usual, I'm your regular host, Georgiagba is my name, and of course, with me here in the studio, our in-house analyst. We have a political pundit here. On my left hand side, we have Chibuzo Kaibe.
Thank you.
And of course, Tunde Ogunjola.
Thank you for having me.
He's here with us in the studio.
Thank you.
And the big issue for the day is the Northern Elders and the PDP consensus conundrum. Well, the rumpus over the Northern consensus candidate among presidential aspirants of the People's Democratic Party has become one of the most difficult conundrums in the country's political space, particularly for the main opposition party in the build-up to the 2023 general elections. Spokesman of Northern Elders Forum, Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, yesterday disowned their leader, Professor Ango Abdullahi, saying he was acting on his own when he endorsed former Senate President Bukola Saraki and Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed as consensus presidential candidate of the opposition party in the country. Specifically, the NEF director said the entire process to produce the consensus did not involve the entire members of the forum. And this generated much controversy with former Senate President Bukola Saraki saying he was going to back out. And of course, the likes of Tambuwa rejected that particular decision taken by the Northern Elders, who were actually acting following the former military president, Muhammadu Buhari, who was actually midwifing the whole process. Former chairman of the Northern Elders Forum, elder statesman, Dr. Paul Onongo, came out to defend the moves, mentioning certain kind of elders that were there when the consensus was arrived, saying that it was a process that was free and fair. So, the whole thing we are talking here is there in the public domain, but I think let's look at these issues critically because there are so many questions Nigeria are asking about this PDP Northern consensus candidate. We all know that consensus has always been a contentious issue. But what was the likes of Saraki, Bala Mohammed, and Tambuwa? What were they thinking when they now started that arrangement?
Thank you. I think this whole process started on March 20th. That was when they held their first meeting. I think it was in Bauchi State. That was the first time the concept was mentioned. The idea of coming up with a candidate from amongst themselves. The three of them, Bala Mohammed, Saraki, and Tambuwa, to see whether they can, start up a process towards building a consensus or making a consensus candidate emerge from amongst them, being the northern candidates at the time, aspirants rather at the time. Subsequently, Mohammed Hayatuddin joined them, and they started going from state to state, meeting PDP governors and stakeholders, selling the idea of having a consensus candidate emerge from amongst them. Subsequently, they also met Atiku Abubakar, who gave a nod but declined to be a member of it. And then at some point, there was a whole idea about broadening the whole idea to have other aspirants, regardless of zone, be part of the conversation. But of course, that didn't happen because even from the onset, the likes of Nyesom Wike kicked against it. Uh, although Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom was indifferent about it, there was no sense of commitment to it. Who else? The other guys from the southeast also didn't make a mention of it. In fact, if it's anything, they will also try to form their own kind of alliance, among the southeastern bloc of aspirants. And so it was not for some of us looking in. It was not surprising that the whole thing has gone the way it has gone because it was quite curious to see how those who do not eventually get the candidacy option will take it and all of the procedure that will be used in selecting. So here we are now. Obviously, like everybody has seen, it appears the whole concept has collapsed, and there's a backlash to it, and that is where it's even more
speed.
interesting.
The whole thing collapsed.
Yes.
Saraki, who was even the major beneficiaries, now say he has backed out. He's quitting it, and he's now open contest. You see, just like I said, contentious has always been contentious as far as Nigeria is concerned, especially when there's no strong person backing it. The reason why APC consensus was worked was because President Buhari was standing on top of the APC members in the last national convention for the elective convention. Buhari was there and he stood his ground, and then he mentioned who was his candidate, and that became a consensus. And that is because Buhari is a leader of APC and he's the incumbent president, don't mind. But in this case, Saraki and Co were doing deals with IPP, who has no leverage. Former military president.
Exactly.
Ibrahim Babangida has no leverage again. He's not in power. And of course, he has no leverage over them or the PDP. You understand? Unlike Buhari, who has leverage over the APC. So now, what were they thinking to have just gone to IPP? To now be the one to decide consensus, involving the Northern Elders Forum?
You see, for me, I must fault the entire process because to me, it's not the duty of the Northern Elders Forum to get a consensus candidate for the People's Democratic Party. It's very wrong for them to do that. I think what the PDP presidential aspirants would have ordinarily do is to seek for maybe perhaps endorsement from the Northern Elders Forum, if at all they are willing. But for you to co-opt them into a meeting and say that they should come up with a consensus arrangement for you is totally wrong. What they say is consensus. Consensus means an agreement, an encompassing agreement within everyone involved. You understand? The new Electoral Act, assented by President Muhammadu, Section 84, Chapter 9 of it, stipulates that if there is a consensus agreement, all parties involved must append their signature to it. Otherwise, you go for other options such as direct or indirect primaries. You understand? So, but for the Northern Elders Forum to come up with a consensus candidate without the knowledge of the people of Dr. Akin Baba Ahmed, is obviously wrong for them to do that. You understand? If you must come to equity, you must come with a clean hand. You understand? And there will, of course, be like suspicion among themselves that perhaps maybe money have exchanged hand or they've increased someone pound during the whole process of adopting the consensus candidate, which opts not to be so. You understand? For you to rush to IPP is not a PDP card carrying member or APC. It's like a father. It's play more
father figure
now, not
an elder statesman,
not a party man. And for you to run to him, no, it can't work. You understand? We call that in 2015 when the APC want to come up with President Mahmoud Buhari as a consensus candidate, the likes of Rochas Kurucha, Atiku, and even the founding chairman of leadership, the late Sam Daza was there. You understand? So, but they all come up with someone who is Buhari, which they feel is a credible candidate, and they all agree to push him forward to Nigerians. You understand? And itself, that you come up with they are all northern candidates. Bala Mohammed, Tambuwa, and Saraki. They are all from the north. What do we say about those from the south? You understand? When you are doing the consensus with just northern candidates, it's very wrong.
Thank you very much, Tunde. You heard what Tunde has said. That the thing is even suspicious to the extent that everyone is forced to begin to think that palms were being oiled for this kind of a thing to happen. Nobody would have doubted it, because it was even very absurd in the first place that the Northern Elders Forum and the IBB will be the one that will come and midwife the process of a Northern consensus candidate for a political party, and then the non-aspirant for the South are there waiting. Chibuzo, I must tell you, I think while everybody even the Southern candidate were just quiet, they had something in mind that, you are doing that. Well, let's see how you go first before we start to even talk. And if the thing had been successful and they all agree and come to present it, you know what the Southern candidates and other members of PDP, some aggrieved ones would have said, ask, like the 7 sons of, I've forgotten those 7 sons of who in the Bible, that when they went to start casting demons out of a demonic possessed man. At the end, the man came and met them. When the man come, the man confronted them. He said, "Come, Paul, I know. Jesus, I know. Who are you, these boys?" He said, he got them well beaten. Got beat. For one man, you know how the demons, about the demons of 60 Sunday. Tell them mercilessly,
you must come with clean hands.
Send them all to sleep with a combination of right jabs and left uppercut. That is what would have happened here, because the PDP members now, ask your call. Paul, I know. Jesus, I know. Who are you? This not that for IDP. What is your stake? What leverage do you have? So you can imagine this kind of scenario.
Well, I think it is important to get a backstory to what has happened and try to situate where things actually went wrong. If it was that things did go wrong. At the risk of playing the devil's advocate, now, according to the narrative given by Bala Mohammed, yes, he was a beneficiary. Yes, he has repeatedly defended this. But his narrative as to how they went to IBB in the first place has not been contravened or faulted by the other parties. So to that degree, there's an agreement at that level, and which is they went to IBB. 1. 2. The whole idea was not for everybody. It was something
supposed to be limited
that
to
was
the
voluntary.
normal.
No, it was not limited to, because at some point they were quite clear. Charaki said it a couple of times that this is not a northern thing. That it was supposed to be for everybody. But perhaps when they now noticed that it was just only northern people who are northern aspirants are interested in it, perhaps at that point it became what it is. And so they went to IBP to say, we are surrendering ourselves to you. According to them, we are surrendering ourselves to you. Look at us and pick who you think is best for us. Now, according to them also, IBB now broadened the space by bringing the Northern Elders Forum to help make the decision on how to help, come up with a pattern on how a consensus candidate should emerge. Now, but we now hear from Tambuwa, who says, perhaps because he has lost, who says, "Oh, I told them on the Wednesday before the Friday that they went to Mina that this thing was no longer working, and we agreed that it was no longer working, and we agreed that we were going to put out a statement to the contrary that everybody should go about their thing and forget about this whole consensus
Do
thing.
it based on their popularity.
Exactly. So now the question is, at what point did they decide to go ahead? Who decided to go ahead to CRDP?
And the rest.
At what point did they realize, did they agree that the whole thing had collapsed?
It's just for
Why some develop code
Exactly.
on the way.
So it's quite interesting. But it does not mean that the concept of consensus is bad.
No, it's not a bad idea.
One. Two, it doesn't also mean that it has not been quite effective in the past. We also saw how this played out in 2011, where the northern aspirants also wanted, of course, there will always be grumbles.
Of course.
We saw the Adamuchiroma committee midwife that process. And there was, interestingly, most of the characters.
Yes, sorry to cut you short. I think by the time we come back from this short break, we will just continue right from that point.
Okay.
Well, we'll quickly take a short break, hoping that we will begin to get the comments of our viewers trickling in to actually help in shaping the conversation on the big issue. Don't go offline. We'll be back in a moment.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back. We are still on the big issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is the Northern Elders and the PDP consensus conundrum. We're talking of the consensus arrangement being midwifed. Who that was being midwifed by former military president Ibrahim Babangida and the Northern Elders Forum. Unfortunately, from that conclave, only the black smoke came out. And in the end, all those involved are now rejecting it, including Saraki himself, who was a major beneficiary. Wachibuzo, we're talking, you made mention of a consensus arrangement that has worked, although it's always a contentious issue because the loser will never admit defeat.
Exactly.
But now, why did Atiku, who was the beneficiary of a Northern PDP consensus candidate in 2011, why did he back out? Now, the participants, like Tambuwan, Saraki, and the rest, like Guso, Saraki, and they were all part of that consensus. Atiku defeated all of them. Now that Atiku now had to turn around and say he was not going to be part of this one, it meant something was wrong in the first place. And that would have sent a signal to them, Saraki and Tambuwa, and Bala Mohammed, that something was actually wrong somewhere and that this thing won't even take them anymore. Yes. Just like you said.
So I think we have to look at what played out in 2011 and what just played out now. The agitation behind the 2011 arrangement was built around a stronger insistence from the northern bloc of the PDP that it was their turn to move because of the zoning arrangement. Remember, the former president had just died and Jonathan had taken over. An election was approaching. The 2011 election was approaching. So there was a how do I put it now? A very strong sense.
A concurrence of opinion among the North.
The North.
That it was their turn.
It was still their turn.
And they kind of ganged up even against the incumbent
because
president.
of the way the incumbent president at the
Jonathan,
time,
Jonathan
came to power through the doctrine of necessity, all of the popularity he got. There was a sense that, okay, if you don't put up a strong resistance, he might just get the 2011 election and by rumpus of our. So, key PDP stakeholders from the North, Adamu Chiroma and and some others, set up, actually drove the process of getting a Northern consensus candidate. So it was not like this one that was driven by the aspirants
themselves.
In that time, it was more of the Adamu Chiroma process. They were the ones in the forefront, leading the narrative. Unlike this case. And so that was why Atiku at some point reflected and said the reason why he decided not to join this one, even though he benefited from that one, 2011, is that a process like this shouldn't have been driven by aspirants who are involved in the process. It should have been driven by, elders or people who are not. But again, it was difficult from the onset to have this because even most of the elders in the PDP from the North had already taken sides going into this. We've seen, some PDP stakeholders siding with either of the aspirants. So it was quite a tough call having a consensus arrangement in this kind of context, unlike what played out in 2011. In 2011, even at that, there were still subtle protests because some felt Atiku, skewed the process in some way, but it was not as contentious as what we have now. So those were some of the reasons that Atiku put out for not participating in this process. But I think that perhaps if the Northern Elders Forum, because some of the complaints that has trailed this process so far is that even the Northern Elders Forum didn't liberalize or democratize the process or broaden the process widely enough. Perhaps if they had more people participate in the process, could it have changed the outcome of this?
That is not even what you should be talking about. If they have more, that is in terms of the aspirant,
not in terms of the aspirant,
the elders.
In terms of, because from the report we have, not all of the Northern Elders Forum members participated in the process. So perhaps those who were shut out,
the likes of Dr. Akin
you know what Akin Obama did that
even the likes of Lamido, they involved in this. Because they're all members of the Northern Elders Forum.
All these things they did, Angwa Abdullahi was on his own there. He just said that did abracadabra. That they are
even they admitted, even the Northern Angwa Abdullahi and Co, they admitted, they said they didn't make it for everybody. It was also a select. So what process determined those who participated
and those who
in selecting these ones?
Your process is for select people.
Exactly.
But your results
is for everybody.
I will see throw it back to the aspirant. It is them that baffled me. Former Senate President Saraki, Tambuwala, I don't know what they were thinking. If you want endorsement from these individuals or not an elders, tell them I beg endorsement. Don't say compensation because for me, I don't go seeking for who will support.
They've not gotten to that point. But the endorsement point comes after you've emerged the candidate. In fact, it's even. But what you have said is quite intriguing because what we would have thought they were focusing on is talking to delegates.
Yes. And not the Northern elders who have no stake. They don't have leverage. IBP has no leverage. Okay, now for instance, is the Northern Elders Forum an extension of PDP today? That they thought that the elders will come up. What the elders will come up will not be binding on the party. Are they BOT of PDP?
Of course.
With the IBP as the chairman of PDP.
Of course, Northern Elders Forum is not an extension of the PDP.
That is the point.
You understand? That should ordinarily make the PDP to ensure that its processes are right. You understand? At this point in the history of Nigeria,
in the process of all this, before I cut you, sorry to cut you short, in the PDP, this is edited, they were just watching the drama.
They were watching it.
Nigerian film.
Nigeria at this moment, in our history, we deserve a leader that can help tackle the insecurity, a leader that can ensure that Nigeria enjoys like the dividend of democracy, a leader that can ensure that Nigeria's economy is stable, not the free fall we are seeing in Nigeria amidst lack of employment and all the rest in the country. You understand? The PDP as a party must come out clean. They must ensure that their processes are right. You understand? PDP, that's why you see the APC always coming at that. Okay, after 60 years of you ruling this country, what did you bring? What did you give us? You understand? So PDP should not steal that same path. They should ensure that their processes are right. You understand? So very transparent and free and fair. You understand? Now that Nigeria is now the headquarter of kidnapping in the world, you understand? When Nigeria is the headquarter of kidnapping in the world, we need somebody that can change the narrative. How many people can travel now by road that can ensure that yes, okay, yes, I'm safe? You understand? So we must get our
the southeast. But what we've just seen now, we discovered that the idea of speaking with one voice is not a thing of the south or a thing of the north.
It's about power tussle and power search. The concept of a monolithic north has always been questioned, even before now.
Thank you.
In 2019, where you had solely northern candidates, solely northern aspirants, because it was clearly zoned for the north. We still had about 12 PDP aspirants vie for the position of the vie for the ticket. As of 2019, where it was just purely a northern affair, we had 12. An attempt by the BOT to forge a consensus also didn't work. You know, so if you say they are not speaking with one voice, well, when it comes to power tussle, everybody bears his name. Of course. So
just like Akim Baba that Professor he was on his own when he made that.
That's where some party election can be held while some aspirants won't even know. So power tussle in this country is a dangerous thing.
Well, that is the much we can take for today's edition of the big issue. And of course, what actually happened in the consensus arrangement involving the Northern Elders Forum and former military president Ibrahim Babangida and the Northern PDP presidential aspirant has popped up a question, and that question is what Nigerians will be waiting to see and to whether they'll get an answer from events that will unfold, not only in the opposition PDP, even in the governing All Progressive Congress. And that question is, can the consensus arrangement be trusted as a way to pick a presidential candidate of the major political parties? Well, time will tell. Thank you for keeping tab with us. And of course, I'll have to thank our in-house analysts for actually addressing the big issue the way it should be. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.